everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Send us your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. All past shows are podcasts. You can find them at artistfirst.com. And now out to your hosts. It's Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And to start tonight's show, I have a question for the listening audience, all three of you. Are you guys getting attached to us?
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Because we want to advise you not to do that.
Yes, indeed.
Excuse me. I do have a throat lozenge in, and I will endeavor not to cough more than another time. However, my voice is a little thin tonight. But pressing on, tonight's show is about attachment. And what we're talking about is in the sense of, we'll get into our quote in just a moment, but the succinct way to sum it up is is it 2 Timothy?
1 Timothy 6.
1 Timothy, because you can't have too many Timothys.
1 Timothy 6.
1 Timothy 6, which is sort of like 0 dark 30 in millspeak. Anyway, so 1 Timothy 6 is when we attack at dawn, and the way it goes is like this. I'm going to paraphrase. Maybe you have it in front of you. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. The love of money is the root of all evil.
Right. And people say, of course, money is the root of all evil. And you're missing a key distinction: the love of money. And we're going to define love or the becoming enamored of or attached to money or anything as being the root of all evil. And you can see this writ large, or at least writ throughout the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of many enlightened leaders, Christ and so on, that what we're really looking for here is not to excise ourselves from the world. A wonderful phrase, we've said it many times. We are in the world, we are not of the world. So we're not trying to excise ourselves from the world. In fact, I would hazard to say, Margaret, that some people will substitute this sort of fanatical devotion to a philosophy or a religion or a way for the things that it eschews. So if the way says that you must, wear your underwear on the outside and not eat meat except on Thursdays, they will turn away from all the things which are not those, and then slavishly attach themselves to the dogma and doctrine, and in essence substitute one attachment for another, rather than truly finding the kernel, the wisdom, in saying that even the teachings, even the way, even Christ's teachings, even all the things which are built around it, all the 682 derivations of the law, these are nothing more than just other forms of attachment which you are trying to break and come to the realization that it is not all these things which are in the world which are the root of evil, but rather our love of them.
Mm-hmm. This is true. Do you want me to read the quote from Buddha?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. It is not life, wealth, or power that enslaves us, but attachment to life, wealth, and power. And when you realize what he's saying when he says enslaves, it means that you are mastered by wealth and life and power. You are no longer in charge of it, choosing of your own volition, but But life, wealth, and power have domination over you. Now, when you think of it, you're sitting there going, well, we can understand, if it's wealth, you're always doing everything to get wealth, or power, dominated by power. But what do you mean by life?
Exactly.
And that is a more subtle prison, because life is something that you participate in with every day. But if your life has created all the structures for you, all the walls, and you've just given into it as the demands come up without consciously choosing in that moment the direction you're going, then it is as much as a master as wealth or power.
And what you mean by that, if I might expound, life, people say, well, life, I mean, it's not just a simple act of drawing breath. It is all the things around you. It's in essence giving yourself into the little I, into the I am an accountant. I am an owner of a great sports car. I am, identification with the things, the objects, and also the thought forms and the emotion forms is what people call their life. And one could say, you notice that Buddha puts life first, because both wealth and power are merely more easily identifiable sources of attachment. They're all life. Wealth is a thing that people will pursue. It will dominate them in that regard, and then they say, I am wealthy. I am powerful. So it becomes your identity. I am this, I am that. And so it's just the I am, the unattached I am, the consciousness without any other thing, is what Buddha and Christ and other enlightened leaders are calling us back to. Because we've, in allowing attachment and attaching ourselves, because it's also a choice in at first, your choice to attach yourself to something, to identify with it. And then you go into this unconscious state where that thing becomes or tries to become all of you. Tolle would say, the identification with thought forms, or the identification with emotion forms, or with the pain body, or with many other things. These are all the Buddha's attachments.
Well, Tolle, it is forms, and it's forms of wealth, forms of power. Mm-hmm. Those are very easily identifiable. But forms of life, that's when you get into the ability to be able to reside in consciousness observer mode, or you walk into the steps of, well, I am a mother. And that's easy to get lost in that identity. Or I am a father. Or I think the trickiest one is when you won't look at it and say, well, I am a good person.
Yes, that's a great attachment.
Or I am a bad person. Some people revel in the idea of being a bad person. But right. To look at it in terms of, well, I am a good person, by whose standards are you going to, adhering to? And that leads to the attachment. That leads to that very direct mirror of, well, I say I am this, therefore it has to be mirrored back to me. I say I am a good mother, therefore everything around me's got to reflect that back to me. And then they get crazy when the child goes and does what children always do. It's implying, what, that means I'm a bad mother? We've seen that. Whew.
Well, yes, but I think I would go back and say, when you start to, the attachments are handed to you in some regard in the beginning by society, because you said, who's judging you good? How are you judging yourself good? Oftentimes it's being held up to the standard that's being given to you by the external, by the world. So, the good mother is one example of that, but by whose standard? It goes to, again, the law and then the 650 rules, or whatever the heck it is. It becomes a standard of attachment to a society's rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then therefore your identification is, I am a member of this tribe, I am a this, a that, I am a good person who follows the rules, and if I don't, then I'm a bad person. And then the I ams become all fragmented up in attachments to these external life things.
Well, in the beginning of exploring this world, trying to figure out who you are, you go down that road. I am a child. I am a good child. I am a bad child. I am a, it's truly a young way of beginning to see yourself. It's an inexperienced way because you have had no experience at all at living and understanding how you actually make decisions or do things. So, or how you choose. You have to learn how to begin to choose things, because suddenly you understand about repercussions and pathways. But it's only when you get enough awareness that you realize that there is a difference between identifying with a certain function that you do and who you actually are. And that usually happens when there's a certain goal that you may have met. Let's say you've set yourself out to, I'm going through college and I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to be a writer. And you actually graduate with your English degree, et cetera, and suddenly you're like, I wrote a book. Nobody's reading it. Aren't I a writer? There's a certain hollowness to it. Or even if you've accomplished something great, unless your soul-spirit connection is right there within the flow of life and life force, there is a hollowness that occurs, because suddenly you realize this was done by this small part of me, this mental part, this ego part. I've endeavored to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, but what about the rest of my experience with life?
Yeah, well, I think that's what you're saying is part of the realization that will come to people, perhaps after a long time, perhaps after a short time, that attachments in and of themselves take more than they give in one regard. So, yes, you push yourself into something small, into an I am, a little I am. I am a writer. Take that example. And then you have all the strictures on top of that. Am I a good writer? Does anyone care about what I write? All these things, and then it becomes, nobody cares about me. I must be bad, and it's the I, and almost getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as you said, I agree. With these attachments, there's a hollowness, because there's an interesting sort of thought picture you can think about. Attachments, are like tentacles or strings, and you're being tied down by attachments. But they aren't just attachments in the sense of really like ropes and strings which aren't part of you. It's like your piece of you, let's say a piece of your skin, is getting pulled away and kind of stuck to something. So you're slowly getting more and more entangled, more and more attached, so that the pieces of you, these extensions of you, if you think of them as bodily extensions, are all dragging you down, and there's really truly sapping energy from you, because, and by I mean you, I mean the all you, the I am you, is now pushed further and further down, away from your identity you, your ego you, and your ego you is in a frantic sort of. The more attachments you have, it's, as I think we said the other day, it's a giant ego balloon that you have to keep blowing hot air into, or it's a huge number of spheres, juggling balls. You have to keep juggling. You have to keep them in the air. You're constantly hearing the voices inside your thoughts, which say, well, you have to do this, or you won't do this, or that has to go down. So you have all the lists, and then you have all the emotions, and you have all the things that you're just constantly blowing in energy into. And they take more than they give. There's a hollowness. People express it as sort of a what is the meaning of life, or have I wasted my life, or I feel like why am I here? What this midlife crisis kind of thing? They start to think, well, I have to. I'm half a century old. What have I done with my life? This, and it's all the little I, because the little I is now realizing that all that stuff, all the rules, all the strictures, all the fragments, all the good judgments and bad judgments, has been nothing more than sort of an outflow without any inflow, without any actual feeding of the consciousness.
Feeding of your soul. The idea that you can, as long as you follow all these rules, you're going to be just fine. And the just fine definition is the interesting one, because what it means is you're just checking boxes as opposed to experiencing life in that moment. There is a richness to the moment of now that is not really taught. And in that richness, the heart participates. And that's something that we yearn for. I think we all have had that experience when we were little, where everything was so magical the minute you open your eyes. You just couldn't wait to get out of bed, to participate in the day, because something amazing is always happening. And that's being in that moment of now, and the richness and the fullness of the moment strikes you right in the heart. And somewhere we wind up looking at things and going, well, it should be a certain way. We get taught that things should be a certain way. And life intrudes. Let's face it. Here, physical maturity begins to happen, and life intrudes.
Well, I like what you said. The life intrudes, because all the attachments and the hollowness of them, as I'll use another sort of analogy. These attachments, these strings, become not only just an impediment. They become wearisome. You're dragging them around. You remember in a Christmas, Dickens's Christmas Story. Marley Scrooge's partner who has died, and the ghost that returns, is what? He's burdened by chains. He's basically literally covered in chains, and he says every link he forged himself. And there's lock boxes and money things and all this encumbrance, and it's all what is all piled upon his spirit, and now he has to drag it all through eternity. And every link he forged himself. And he says to Scrooge, that your chain is 10 times longer than mine, and the heaviness of it is a wonder and a marvel to behold. So in essence, the attachments are in essence forged of our own making. They are a burden which grows over time, and I think in that tale, Scrooge realizes that this is something he wants to detach from. This is sort of a tale of detachment, of becoming one with your younger, more present self through through the three spirits. Well, the power of that tale is that everyone can identify with these burdensome attachments, and the hollowness, the heaviness of them grows, as you said, year after year after year. You become weary, and you reach a point in your life where you say, "Was this all there is? Is it just all this, all the rules, and all the attachments, and all the hot air I have to keep blowing into this balloon constantly?" And you come, if you are honest and listening, you come to the end of yourself, and that's a moment which you can grasp back to the real you, to realize how brittle and how dull and how encumbering all these attachments are. But it does take, Margaret, I think, a great deal of courage, because you have to say to yourself, in essence, all the little I's have been wrong all this time. And you have to say either I'm wrong or just disown them all. And it's very difficult for some people to disown them all. Marley makes the comment to Scrooge that your chain is so heavy that you'll never get. You think I'm burdened. Wait till you die.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Well, the realization of what you're doing, it's a wonderful analogy to what you choose to carry with you.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when you carry heavy burdens like that, it's because you're not letting go of whatever it is that you've made the chain out of, or the link out of. If it was chasing after wealth and incidences of holding on to wealth and not being generous, or you were hanging on to something because you felt that letting it go meant more hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may be justified in making the chain where, that person treated me rotten. So I'm going to forge that chain, and I'm going to carry that around with me wherever I go.
Right. The burden of a grudge.
Hatred. And this is what Jesus was talking about, is allowing yourself to forgive. And many times the forgiveness, you're in your heart, you're like, no, I'm not forgiving, no. It's like, and you may be justified, and it may have been something, you've had a bad relationship with someone, and it was repeatable. They did this, they did this, they did it. And it was all, you are justified in being angry and hurt. But it's still a chain that you wind up carrying and burdening your soul with. And aren't you worth more than carrying around all that baggage, all that trash? You were meant to fly, and you can't fly with chains on you. So for your own soul's sake, you must look at it and understand. You may not feel like forgiving. Many of us just don't want to. I don't want to. But when you realize that it is holding you back from taking steps so forward and a destiny so amazing, like, no, forgive it. I've got to forgive it. It'd be like a caterpillar basically saying, no, I want to hang on to my chrysalis because it served me well.
Well, I love the word is enslave. When this is actually a wonderful place to digress for a moment, because the chains that you forge of grievance, right? Somebody has done you wrong, and you know they're wrong, and you know what? And let's say they did evil to you. Evil was done upon you. You are justified. All those things take energy, and they are things of the past. Totally would say in the now, they're not here. The situation is not the same. You're no longer being injured. All these things are true. But all that injury that you have attached yourself to in the past and keep alive, what does it do? What Margaret just said. These things enslave you. They chain you. The oppressor or the aggressor or the person who hurt you, persons who hurt you, live on. Where? In you. Because you're chained. You've attached yourself to them. Not because they are physically touching you anymore, but your thought forms or pain body, to use Tolle's terms, keep that hurt alive. And as you said, people say, well, I'm never going to forgive them because then they get away with it or something. And that, that righteous anger is yes, it feels right because it's a righteous anger, but yet it's a chain. And it keeps you rooted, not even in the now, it keeps you rooted in the past. It keeps you in a little bit of hell. Because you're living in the moment of not now, but of then. And you're living in the grievance, in the pain that was done to you in the distant past. And all of us know that people do this and then carry these things forward past the point of the other person's death, past the point where they even care anymore. It doesn't matter because none of the current reality matters. It's all attachment through the pain body, through the I'll never forgive them, they did to me, they should pay. These things are stealing life. They're stealing the present moment. They're stealing what Margaret said, which is the amazing thing that you are and can be, being in the now and living in the past are antithetical to each other. They can't be. You cannot do both. You can't live in the past, hold on, attach yourself to grievance, to pain, and be in the present moment. You cannot do both.
It's difficult because you wind up switching back and forth in your consciousness like a ping pong ball. It's a learning curve. But when you hang on to a grievance and you do not forgive, part of your soul is actually used, part of your life force is actually used to contain that memory. And that part that's holding the memory doesn't mature along with the rest of your soul energetic. It is at that point in time when whatever it was had occurred. You may have been a small child and something happened and you couldn't process it at that point in time. So there's a part of your energy that takes that memory, takes all of that incident and encapsulates it. But that part of you is at the age and the maturity that you were when the incident happened. So it will stand there and hold this because it understands that the major part of you needs help, needs peace, needs time to be able to get through it. And it's sitting there waiting for the rest of you to come to the point of maturity to say, okay, I will look at that now. I will process that now. I will open that up now. But when you do, you need to realize that the energy it took to hold that memory is still the little child that was when it happened. So that begins the integration process of your energies to bring that little part of you along with great love and great tenderness. It is almost like you are the adult raising the child you to come up to maturity.
And thereby detach from that. You know, we've gone beyond we have to reattach ourselves to the studio for a brief moment and listen to some commercials, but don't get attached to them because we will be back.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Hello, this is Highway 59 recording artist Randy Moore, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out It's time for some Moonstones and Murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Amanda Gray. Check out my new book, Glimpses of Grace in Georgia, available on Westbow Press Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. More information can be found at my website, www.glimpsesofgraceingeorgia.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Glad you've joined us on The Soul of the Everyman. All past shows are podcasts. You can binge listen anytime you like. Visit ArtistFirst.com. Back to Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, D-Man. And everyone relatch on. We're trying to eschew. We're trying to talk about eschewing attachment. But tonight's show is about attachment, and where we left off was, I think, a very salient point that oftentimes, when and in Buddha's quote, it's not life that enslaves you, but attachment to life. The attachment to life is not always, life, which is, the world around you. Sometimes it's attachment to your own life. Margaret was describing the fact that when something happens to you that you cannot process, there's words, there's names for these things, PTSD and all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't really matter. The issue is that an event happened. It could have no person attached to it, or it could have a person attached to it. You're in some way injured, and at that time, at that moment, it's overwhelming. It's something which is beyond your capacity or capability to deal with. We've all had these things happen to us. The body, the mind, has a sort of, let's say, a safety valve or a fuse that just short circuits that. You can't deal with this right now. We're just going to tuck it away. You likened it to encapsulate. You put it in a place, but you can't. You the person, you the being, don't have like pockets. You use a piece of you. You use a piece of your life to encapsulate that. We could refer to it as a bad memory, or as a traumatic event, or as PTSD, all these different names. But in essence, a piece of you, let's call it a fragment of you, is left behind in the sense of the timeline. And the present you is lessened, and in some ways unable to be fully present anymore. Because part of you, and unfortunately, if people live traumatic lives, many parts of them, when you see people who you say this is a broken person, they're physically whole, but their being has been shattered by events over many years, perhaps, and each one of those events has taken a piece of their being and locked it up in a piece of pain body, let's say, an entity use Tolle's terms, which lives on. And it has, as Margaret said, all the characteristics of the past you at that moment, And when people get triggered, when these memories, Attachmen, who studied these things from an emotional standpoint, in essence says that these are energetic triggers. They get tied into survival. The trauma, Margaret, is usually so bad that you felt that you were going to die, or it's so bad that you were incredibly injured, and so it acquires a survival level trigger. And then when these things are triggered, you're right back there as though it was happening that very moment. That's the PTSD portion of it. And you have these flashbacks, or you have these terrors that because your true being is being literally dragged back and put into the same time body state, of incredible stress and terror and pain, but also without any tools. You're dragged back blind and deaf and dumb right back to the moment of when it happened without any tools. The way people heal from these things is they learn to open these things in some sort of a safe way, and drain some of that emotional charge out of them. But these are what you were talking about. But if you're just fragmentary and triggered, your whole consciousness is gone, and you're back in the moment of pain and injury and trauma that you experienced, however it can be, decades ago, but yet you're right back there.
Mm-hmm. And this is where your consciousness is key, because you're in this reaction, and unless you make the decision that, okay, I'm going to take care of this now, you will just continue to stay in that loop repeatedly. And every time you're triggered, you'll go through the reaction from start to finish. Then it's draining, and really not where you want to be. So making the decision that we are going to process this, we are going to change this, you must, at that point, in your heart, say, I'm more than this. This is a memory, but I'm more than this, and I'm more than everything that this memory is telling me or implying that I am. It is very difficult when you have identified yourself with the trauma. So to begin to take steps means that you must enlarge your concept of being who you are. And it helps to tap into the spirit aspect of who you are, because the soul is so embroiled in the trauma and the memory, because the soul is what you feel, your emotions, and what you think. But your spirit understands eternity and is outside that loop. So going into your spirit consciousness or consciousness is the first step.
And these things can also require counseling and therapy. This is not easy stuff, especially with trauma. But these are attachments too, and this idea of attachment being the root of all evil is sort of a mischaracterization, because it seems to say, well, okay, then detachment is somehow good. In essence, what we're really saying here is that it is the attachments through which evil will represent itself. Okay, will steal energy from the being, will drag your consciousness from the present moment into the past. And the other attachments, the attachments of the world, of wealth, of power, they can also drag you into the future. These attachments drag you away from the present. But the present, you can go either direction. You can go back to the past and talk about regrets or grudges or grievances or traumas or all the other things that it all happened to me and they were all out to get me. Blah, now you're all in the past. Or I have to do this in order to get that, or I'm going to be this, or I want to, living completely in the future. Living for the bucket list, living for all the lists, living to check off the boxes, it's all, you're all dragged into the future. Your attachments are nothing more than, in essence, every one of them, regardless, are all distracting you from what? You in the now. You in this moment. And in this moment, which is whereas Tolle says, everything happens in the present moment. Nothing ever happens in the future. Nothing in the past can touch the present moment. It is though it has never happened except in your mind, because the present moment is the present moment. Well, something last week and I still have the scar. Yeah, but in the present moment, you're just a being who happens to have a scar. If you attach yourself to the scar, you can be the being who's being stabbed in that moment 10 years ago and feeling all the pain. But you're not in the present moment anymore. You're in your younger, more traumatized memory, pain body self, the little I am, dragged into the past and living there. And then, as you said, Margaret, every little thing that happened then will just get played out. Who's the one who was talking about the neural pathways? These neural pathways trigger, and they go through the same steps, one after another, after another, after another, like a merry-go-round, like a sequencer. Like you can't get off the train until it comes back to the station, and then suddenly you say, wow. But that wow will happen right again. As soon as somebody blows the whistle or does whatever it is that triggers you, poof, you're off to the races again.
What I'd like to point out is that we were speaking of, and this is both Buddha and Tolle were saying, there are forms of wealth and forms of power. But what we are just speaking of right now are forms of life.
Yeah.
This is answering the question of what does that mean? Forms of life, again, are much more complex and subtle because we are so immersed in what is going on that we do not necessarily observe what is going on. So when you understand that these are forms of life that you are adhering to or identifying with, and to become aware when you are doing it, and to notice the spaces in between where you're observing the thought, and then you have that moment of, I am observing. And then you may wind up going back into whatever the thought or the emotion is. But to intensify those moments in between where you are observing, and it becomes more and more easy with that discipline or practice set into place. It helps take steps towards peace, as well as beginning to resolve what the triggers are. So it is detaching yourself from the things that you identify with as you, or the forms of life that you identify yourself as you. So going back to the previous example, I am a mother. Identifying strictly as a mother, then suddenly that's more than your role. You're saying that that's your identity, which means that is your whole reason to be. But your being state is, much more vast than that. So the reason I bring this up is because early on, I identified myself as a mother. But when you lose a child, that's shattered. And if I stayed strictly in, I am a mother, and that is shattered, what you have is a shattered person. And you must, at that point, decide that no, I'm not just a mother. I am so much more. But the pain of having your identity shattered, there are no words for that agony. Because it's more than just your identity. It is your relationship in love to the one that is lost.
Yeah. And this will happen with any... This is why attachment becomes hollow and painful. Attachment is a great word because when you break an attachment, it's like ripping something off of your being. If you've truly attached yourself to something.
I would liken it to attachment is a tool by which you begin to explore the space that is you, the different aspects of you. You use the attachment in terms of an energy flow that allows you to build structures in order to experience or help experience the world in a certain way. When that attachment is broken and you have relied on it, a soul nourishment, if you would. Like being a mother, you do a lot as an expression of love. But that's getting involved with narrowing down what love actually is. Love, unconditional love, has no attachments. And that is what the ultimate goal is down here.
This requires some explanation, but yes, I agree with you completely. The attachment, and think of it as a tool, is an interaction. Where it becomes toxic, where it becomes a problem, is when you start to say, "I am the attachment."
I am the form. I am the form.
I am the form. If you think of, let's say you have a body, and there are many parts to your body, and you have fingers, and there are many parts to your fingers. You have a fingernail, you have a fingertip. I am the fingertip is a problem, especially if the fingertip is stuck in something and can't be removed. That now you're literally attached and identifying yourself with a very, very small piece of the actual you. The analogy breaks down in the sense that the vast you is far greater than any piece. But these attachments become, in essence, drains. But they feel initially right because you're like, I'm interacting with the world. The idea of attachment is, and this is what, again, the Buddha says here and what many people, many others have said, you can be in the world. You can do everything. You can, to the fullest extent that you want to put your being into something, everything that you do should be done in the now and to the full extent with your whole being. You're being a mother. You're being whatever you want to be. But in observing it from a place of detachment, a place of, as Margaret just said, unconditional love of all things, you don't have the attachment. The heart is nourished. The being is nourished. But the being knows that mother is what you are being right now, the role you are playing right now, because it needs to be done.
It is the form of life that you participate in.
Participating in fully as you fully can. But then in the next moment, or whatever it is, the next life goes on, and you are no longer being that thing. Now you're being a grandmother, or you're being alone, or you're being whatever it is. Every state in the unconditional love place of unconditional love, is as valid and has as much now in it as any other state. And you leave not a trail of fragments, you leave a trail of experience behind you. In fact, you actually gather all the experience with you. These are all the things that you have experienced through not attachment, but through interactions of your being with the world, experiences that you have gathered, fed yourself with, and then at the end of the interaction time in this world, what do you bring back? As we've said many times, you bring back your experiences. You bring back all that was done here, all that you learned, all that you did, all that you were able to do and be, back to source. It's your song. It's your interaction here. But you weren't you're a hermit recluse, never touching anything, but sitting there going om all day. No, you lived a full life without attachment.
It's a very difficult thing to do, to live your life without attachment, because it takes a level of awareness of the present moment constantly. And it's all-encompassing at that point if you can begin to explore it. Because what it means is your spirit is truly free.
Yep.
And your soul and your body have come into alignment with that to participate in spirit living, heart living. And it's a very different existence because everything in you is in agreement. There is no dissonance of any form. You're not contradicting yourself in any way. Someone sees you and hears you, and that is exactly who you are. You're not hiding anything. And that's a very scary place for a lot of people because they depend or they are addicted to other people's judgments. But that's a whole nother topic.
It is. I mean, I'm reminded of Whitman, the Song of Myself, which is a wonderful poem. You should look it up and read it. The wonderful, this idea of living life in the moment without regrets and being, truly being, brings you into harmony. It brings you into a natural balanced state where nothing, it's the little monk, is that so? Nothing in the present moment has the power to make you fragment, to put piece of you to steal your energy. And you're in the moment of decision always. You just say, okay, this is what I have to do. I accept it. I do what needs to be done. I take that experience with me and I move on. And the experience, though, that we have to take with us at this point is we have to detach ourselves from these headsets.
Okay.
Oh, I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.